Hi, I'm Nathan. Welcome to SOS, where my dad and mom share parenting tips hidden in the Bible. Are you ready? Let's go.
Before the first act of disobedience, there was perfect peace in this world.
In other words, there was shalom. A perfect parent had established a perfect home for his children, and he gave them one simple rule.
This instruction was disobeyed, however, and the result was death and disaster.
Our homes today can be like that original Garden of Eden. Things might be great one minute, and the next thing we know, chaos. Adam and Eve didn't get a second chance to obey God, and the same can sometimes be true for children today.
Please do not take this for granted. You may not get a second chance to tell your child to not play near a street where there are deadly moving vehicles, or to stay away from a swimming pool where he or she can fall and drown.
And so, we can learn from the beginning of the very first book of the Bible that first word obedience can be extremely important and might actually save your child from death. In turn, your family will be saved from chaos, heartache, and despair. In a moment, we'll discuss more practical examples of life's challenges when it comes to raising children, and go over how we as parents can set ourselves up for success or failure right from the start. And all of this revolves around your child learning to obey the first time. Stay tuned. Shalom everyone, this is D.L. Dunnaville, and today, right now, I want to take the time just to share with all of you some parenting tips. Parenting 101, Child Training 101. We can call this the School of Shalom. And by shalom, I mean peace. Peace regardless of your circumstance. So if you're divorced, separated, if you're a single parent, or really just struggling in your marriage, whatever it is, whatever's going on, an ability to focus on things above and have peace. And so we can't fix everything, but what we can help, let's work on that if we can. So one small way I'd like to contribute and help out is for parents. And again, this applies to whatever your situation might be. You could be a single parent, divorced, separated, whatever the situation. Your children don't have to suffer for any of that. You don't have to suffer for any of that. When your children are misbehaved, man, it creates these extra stresses. It just makes your life that much harder. And you want your children to be a blessing. You want to enjoy them, and they want to love you. You want to love them. But when there's chaos all around, hardly anyone's happy. So a lot of times we're just winging it in life. And this is one case where you don't have to wing it. We have a manual, we have God's word. It tells us how to properly raise up children. It says train up your child in the way he should go, and when he's older, he will not depart from it. Children need training. There are some people who are offended by that title about training children, but we have to lay down those tracks. We lay down those tracks, and we sow, we plant, and in the end we get a return, and everyone is happier and the better for it. We're happier as parents. We have healthier relationships. Even when that child is not enjoying it at the time, in the end, they will appreciate. They'll appreciate it, and so will you. So I wanted to start in Genesis. That's where everything begins. That's when the first parent talked to the first child. That was God talking to Adam and Eve. We're going to read in Genesis chapter 2, starting in verse 16. And the Lord said, and the Lord God commanded the man, saying, of every tree of the garden you may freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you eat of it you shall surely die. That's where I'd like to start. Genesis 2. And if you talk to any of my children, if you interview my children and ask them what's something that daddy is always saying to you, And it's me telling them, how many times did God tell Adam and Eve not to eat of the tree? That's one thing. That's one of my lines I say to my children all the time. And what am I getting at? What am I talking about? First word, one word obedience. So for today's lesson, I wanted to go over the topic of first word or one word obedience. You should not have to tell your child the same thing more than once. If you do have to tell your child something more than once, then there is always a consequence. So how is this going to carry over to real life? Well, when that cop tells that 16-year-old, they'll do the same thing when they're 16 that they did when they were 6. When that cop tells that 16-year-old, all right, I'm giving you a warning, stop speeding. The first time the child made a genuine mistake when they went out on the road, but cop pulls them over, gives them a warning. Well, now because this child has learned since they were yay tall, since they were small, from their parent, yes means yes, no means no, and stop speeding means stop speeding. So guess what? This child might be literally saved from death because the authority in their life tells them at 16 to stop doing something, and it's been ingrained in their brain. They've been trained up since they were a child. They've been trained up in the way they should go. They've been trained up to respect authority, to obey the first time, and not to be told over and over to do the right thing.
So far, we've talked a lot about the what, that being first word obedience. But now let's talk more about the how. What are some ways to get your child in the habit of listening and obeying right away, the first time you say something? Well, as touched on earlier, we as parents must be sure to enforce some sort of consequence anytime our children disobey the first time. This goes for the small offenses as well as the big ones. If the offense is small, then the consequence should also be small. Let's hear an example.
We're talking, let's say you tell a child to pick up a toy. Pick that toy up. And why are you telling that child that? Well, because you don't want to trip over it, or you don't want that toy to get broken, or it's just time to clean up because the child's getting ready for bed, getting ready to go somewhere. So you tell the child, hey, pick up that toy. If you didn't know, children start testing you to see if you really mean what you say. They start testing you before they're even a year old. People talk about terrible twos, and the reason why people experience quote-unquote terrible twos is because they spent 23 months. Children spent a lot of time prior to that time already testing you as a parent to see if you mean what you say and say what you mean. So when you tell a child, hey, pick up that toy, you should expect it to happen, and if it does not happen, there's always a consequence. So we're not talking about, okay, the child doesn't pick up that toy and so you beat that child. No, but there's always a consequence. What happens in my home? I tell a child to pick up that toy doesn't get picked up. Either I will say something again to that child and say, so-and-so, pick up that toy and give it to daddy now. Child picks the toy, hands it to daddy, and guess what? That toy goes in what I call the toy trunk. And this is another tip, another tidbit in one. We have in my household what I call the toy trunk. It's the place where it's toy prison basically, where all the toys go for whatever reason. And then guess what? The children earn that toy back. When they do something exemplary, something above and beyond, or I also have a system. We have a system in my home where every so often we have what's called a star chart, and for the smaller children. And after so many times of earning so many stars, it's a reward incentive program for positive reinforcement. The child gets to earn toys out of the toy trunk. So all of a sudden they get back this toy, this Lego or whatever it is, and they're happy as all get out. You would think they just went to Toys R Us and came back with something brand new. They're happy to get back this toy that was originally theirs in the first place. So it's a crazy win-win. The child is first and foremost taught obedience.
So we can see here that in one form or another, you should hold your child accountable for disobedience the first time and right away. Don't teach them bad lessons indirectly. Accordingly, you should always say what you mean and mean what you say as a parent. In other words, stick to your guns. This is so important. If your child asks for something and you say no, only for them to come back and ask again, and then you give in, you have just taught your child this is negotiable. Ask me how I know. This is a hard lesson to learn, but it's very, very important. Once they learn to bug, it's going to lead to more bugging down the road, and it will not stop in their adolescence. It will carry on to other areas of their life as well. So it's important that we as parents nip this in the bud early on. So in conclusion, today we covered first word obedience and some ways that we can accomplish this. There's a lot more we can say about this topic, but that is all the time we have for today. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and tune in for the next episode.
It's me again. Please like and also comment with a topic you'd like to see my parents cover. Shalom.
Okay. 3 takes.